All right, welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going to try and get inside one of the most protected places on Earth, a sterile medicine factory. We're about to pull back the curtain and see how they build this fortress of absolute purity in a world that is, well, anything but. So, let's see if we can get through the baits. So, this is the big question, right? Every single surface, every speck of dust, heck, the very air we're all breathing is just teeming with microorganisms. So how on earth do you create a product that can be safely injected directly into a person's body? Well, you've got to build a system where perfection isn't just a goal, it's the only acceptable standard. The answer really starts right here with something called GMP, or Good Manufacturing Practices. Now I know, that sounds kind of dry, but this is not just some boring set of regulations. Think of it as the master blueprint for the entire fortress. It's a super detailed rulebook that dictates everything. And I mean everything, from the airflow in a room to the way a tiny box is labeled. And it's all designed for one critical purpose: patient safety. So what's the first rule of building any impenetrable fortress? It's all about the layout, the entire defense against contamination. It all begins with the physical design of the facility itself. Okay, so the absolute first principle of GMP design is surprisingly simple: separation. People and materials are treated like two completely different kinds of traffic that can never, ever cross paths. Personnel have their own designated routes, their own hallways, while all the raw materials, the packaging, the finished products, they have their own separate path. This one simple concept is a huge first line of defense against contamination. And when it comes to the materials, that rule gets even stricter. Their path is a one-way street, no exceptions. Raw materials come in one end, they move through production, and the finished product leaves out another end. There is absolutely no backtracking. It's a pretty clever design because it makes it physically impossible for a potential contaminant to move backward from a dirty area into a cleaner one. Now, inside the fortress, you have layers of security, almost like concentric castle walls. These are the clean room classifications. Grade D is kind of like the outer courtyard, used for things like initial packaging. You move deeper, and you get to grade C, where the more serious prep work happens. But the inner sanctum, the place where the medicine is actually exposed to the air while it's being filled into vials, that is grade A, the absolute peak of purity. And that grade A zone actually sits inside a super clean grade B background environment. So every step you take deeper into the facility is literally a step into a cleaner, purer world. All right, so the fortress itself is designed. What's next? Well, we've got to see how they guard the gates by controlling every single thing that comes inside, and that starts with the raw materials. So picture this. A raw material arrives at the loading dock. Its journey starts right there. It's immediately inspected, every little detail checked against a mountain of documents. From there, it doesn't just go onto a random shelf. It goes to a highly controlled, segregated storage area. And only after it passes a whole battery of tests is it finally given the green light, stamped approved, and released for production. And that storage area we mentioned? It's really more like a high-security vault. Materials are physically separated into zones for quarantine, approved, and rejected, so there is literally zero chance of a mix-up. The environment is monitored 24/7, and you'd better believe there are alarms ready to go off at the slightest change in temperature or humidity. And to make sure nothing ever expires on the shelf, they live by a strict first-in, first-out rule. Okay, so we've got our approved materials. Now it's time to head into the real heart of the facility, the production area. This is where the rules get even more intense, and the stakes are, well, as high as they get. And the manufacturing process itself? It's really a carefully choreographed march through those clean room grades we just talked about. It all starts with dispensing, the super careful weighing of all the raw ingredients. That happens in a grade C area. Then those ingredients are mixed and filtered, still in grade C. And finally, the precious medicine moves into that grade A zone for aseptic filling, where the sterile liquid is put into its final vials under the purest conditions you can possibly imagine. You want to know one of the biggest, simplest safeguards against human error? It's this number, 2. At that critical first stage, weighing the ingredients, it's not enough for one highly trained operator to do the job. A second, completely independent operator has to verify every single measurement, every single time. It sounds so simple, right? But this two-person rule is an incredibly powerful defense. But what about preventing, say, one medicine from accidentally getting into another? Well, for that, they have a whole set of what you could call rituals. They'll either use completely separate, dedicated equipment for each different product, or they follow these unbelievably strict, scientifically validated cleaning procedures between batches. Before any new batch can even start, a line clearance has to confirm that every last trace of the previous product is gone. And of course, the deeper you go into the facility, the crazier the gowning requirements get for every single person. Okay, so you've built the fortress, you've got the process down pat, but that's not enough. Not even close. You have to be watching, constantly. This final part is all about the unending surveillance that's required to make sure the fortress stays pure. So during every single production run, the quality team is basically on a hunt for invisible enemies. Their surveillance is total. They're not just looking for one thing, they're monitoring everything from non-living dust particles and living microbes in the air to anything that might have settled onto a surface. It's a constant, comprehensive checkup on the clean room's health. And here's a really cool little detail about how they fight those microbes. They don't just use one disinfectant over and over. They actually rotate between different types on a regular schedule. So why do they do that? It's to prevent any surviving microbes from developing resistance. It's this proactive, almost chess-like strategy to stay one step ahead in the constant war against contamination. You know, this quote really says it all. It perfectly captures the mindset here. If any one of those countless tests, whether it's on the raw materials, the environment, or the final product, comes back with a result that is even slightly outside the acceptable limits, it's not just a problem, it's a full-blown investigation. They have to find the root cause and make absolutely sure it can never, ever happen again. So when you really look at it, a sterile drug factory is this incredible, meticulously designed fortress, a whole system of interlocking procedures and constant vigilance, all to create one perfectly pure product. And it kind of makes you wonder, right? What other invisible fortresses just like this one, from our food supply to our data networks, are working tirelessly behind the scenes to protect our daily lives? Thanks for joining us for The Explainer.